Going to again create a new session that's just a blank session. That's fine, and we'll save it sure on the desktop. I don't care. We'll call it session 3, and here we go. We've got the Pro Tools open. We're going to put some audio in here from the outside world. We don't really have anything in there yet. Let's go and find some audio. If you're on a PC and you won't be able to follow this because this is a Mac, a good place to go and get some loops or any sound, I would strongly recommend going to www.freesound.org. You have to sign in. You have to register, but they won't give you any garbage mail, and the samples here are good, and you can share them with your friends, and everybody is happy. Of course, if you make $1 million, you probably want to pay some of it back with the Creative Commons, but you know, that's the way it goes. Everybody should share the joy. Alright, so on your Macintoshes, all those Mac fanboys out there, let's go Command N to get a new Finder window in the Finder. And we go to the Macintosh hard drive. If we go to Library, Audio, Apple Loops, Apple Loops GarageBand, again just to track that one up again, Library, Macintosh hard drive, Library, Audio, Apple Loops, and Apple Loops GarageBand. And there's a whole bunch of loops in here we could use. I think I might choose a little club dance beat, 005. I love the sound of that. We just take that file and drag it into the regions list in Pro Tools. It'll convert it to a WAV, and we can use it in there. And we can then, let's go for what? Let's scroll down and see what we got here. A hip hop beat, love it. So we're going to drag a little hip hop beat in there. So the first thing we can do without having these in tracks is we hold down the Option key on the keyboard, and you can audition them so you can hear what each of these files sounds like. So let's start off with the hip hop beat. Let's drag the hip hop beat into our into the gray area. You see it automatically creates a new track for you when you drag it in there. I can use my grabber tool to move it back. If I'm in slip mode, that's probably a good place to start. And we can listen to this thing being played back. Maybe you want to loop it, so you hold Control and hit the Control key down and hit the play button, and you'll see it brings it up as a loop playback. Listen to this thing go back, and it doesn't loop really cleanly. It's got something at the end. I'm zooming in on the end of this thing. You can see that it's got a little bit of silence there at the end that's making the loop not quite right. Stop playback, go to my trimmer tool, and I'm going to trim just a little bit off the end so this thing hopefully loops better. Play it again, hit the space bar, and this thing should loop just fine. It does. I'm going to zoom back out, double click on that zoomer tool, and then I'm going to hit Command I, which brings up the identify beat. This is where we're going to set the tempo, because then we'll be able to edit this thing. Just to cancel that for a second, but we can see that the tempo, the default tempo, is 120 BPM, and if we're looking at this thing in grid mode, it's not hard to see that this is not select bar out of that thing. There's this bar which is not really a bar. Okay, so if we want to edit this thing using the grid, we probably want to set the tempo to something closer to what this file is actually at. So we do Command I, brings up the identify beat command. We're going to say it's a 2-bar beat, so we're going to say it ends on bar 3 beat 1. So bar 1 is the start point, and the end point is bar 3 beat 1, so that's 2 bars in between bar 1 and 3, in case, like me, you're a little mathematically yes. So we can go to the grid. We can see our grid. Well, my grid is set on 1-bar grid, which means I only have really 2 things that I can edit. I could do something, for example, like change that grid to something a bit finer. My grid settings are hidden over here. So I can change my grid with this, clicking on this little down arrow here. I can choose, well, first thing to notice is, yeah, the tempo is now 84.782. That's awesome. I'll choose like 30-second notes, and maybe I'll just grab this little guy here, or sure, I don't know what that sound is. I can quickly hear it. No, just let's say hit Command D to duplicate that. Get a little stutter going on at the start there. Hit return so I can hear the entire thing. Alright, perfect. Alright, so let's say now we have this other track here, the club. We'll have to make this smaller again, a little bit of back and forwards. Alright, so we're going to take this club, whatever the hell that was called, club dance thingamabob. Let's go into shuffle mode so we can drop it onto this, and it should just line up to the end of the last region. Take that club thing, drop it in there. You can see it starts at the end of the hip hop beat. Probably no great surprise that this club dance thing is not in the same tempo. You can hit play on that one to verify that in your mind. And we can zoom out on the whole thing, double clicking on the zoom tool. Again, if we want to have a listen to this loop here, it's very groovy and it makes me want to dance. Hope it makes you want to dance too. You can tell again it's not a very clean loop. We need to again just trim a little bit off the end. So I zoom in on the end of that region, choose the trimmer tool, trim it up a little, listen to that on the loop playback. That's much better. Alright, so again we could hit identify beat. We could say it starts on bar 3, beat 1, and it ends on bar 5, beat 1. Or we might say, well, okay, let's just do that. So it ends on bar 5, beat 1. See now the new tempo is 62.7, blah blah blah. I think that's probably not quite right. It's actually a 4-bar beat, not a 2-bar beat. So let's say we'll just put this up to 7, so there's that 4 bars. 125.488, that's more like it. Again, we could go back into grid mode here and do something groovy, like take a 30-second note out of there and do the same things we did before. Hit Command D with the selection and you'll get another little stuttering action. That sounds horrible. Alright, I might actually hit, what we might want to do is to, instead of changing tempos here, which would be one way to play, instead I'm going to hit Command Z to undo that, Command Z again to get rid of that tempo marker out of there, and instead make this, oh no, I also lost that edit off the end maybe, oh no I didn't, still. So okay, so instead we might want to make this conform to the tempo of this other one here, the hip hop. So now we could take our trimmer tool, and if we hold down on the trimmer tool you'll see we have the option for time compression expansion. So we can actually take this and let's say we want it to only be 2 beats, I mean 2 bars in the old tempo. I might go back and change my resolution on my grid here to whole bars again, and then I can basically just drag that back and it's going to process it. So now it's really fast and it fits the tempo of the hip hop beat. Alright, so that's a bit garbage. It might sound a bit garbage to you, and that's probably because the time compression expansion tool here just sounds bad. So what we might do instead is to hit Command Z and undo that and turn on what's called the elastic audio. So if you click on this little icon right down here, I don't know what to call this, the way it looks like an upward arrow or something, but it's the elastic audio plugin selector. You have a bunch of options here: polyphonic, rhythmic, monophonic, varispeed, or X form, which is the best sounding one, but for varispeed is probably the way you'd want to play it, because it'll just drop or change the pitch, make it higher pitched if you shorten it. This is good for drums, not so good for a lot of pitched material, but we'll go there. Now we have the option to basically do the same thing, and instead of, that doesn't sound so great, so maybe I'll try it like this. That sounds kind of interesting. Alright, so yeah, you've got this time compression expansion jive over here. The best sounding one out of all of these is the X form, but it renders the track, which means you can't really change it much afterwards. It sounds better. It might take a little while to render it as well. Alright, until next time, have fun with all that.